Hey, good morning. It's my pleasure to be here representing ExxonMobil at this year's annual ARC Forum. And I'd like to express my gratitude to ARC for hosting this event and creating a venue where we can all get together and talk about the latest developments in the automation and digital space. By way of a brief introduction, my name is Clausi. I currently serve as the Vice President of Engineering for ExxonMobil. I've been with the company for 22 years, and during that time I've had the privilege of working in a number of businesses, manufacturing facilities, and technical organizations throughout the corporation. In my current role, our engineering organization really has two primary missions. First is to provide technical support for our day-to-day operations, and second is to develop and ultimately deploy new technologies that advance our competitiveness. And to that end, our company's been on a digital transformation journey, probably not unlike many of the companies here today. And that journey has been really focused on leveraging the rapidly advancing digital capabilities, data analytics, and innovation to improve the performance of our people and our facilities. We've been actively working a large portfolio of programs, both short-term and longer-term. And today what I'd like to do is spend a little bit of time sharing with you some perspectives on what the past year has taught us about digital deployments and digital transformations, and then also link it to one of our more aggressive digital transformation efforts in the industry, which is the open process automation venture. Let's talk about 2020. I think it goes without saying that the COVID pandemic and the resulting disruption made last year one of the more challenging years in recent history. And that's probably a true statement across a bunch of businesses and industries. And while our digital transformation started long before 2020, the challenges of the past year really had a couple significant impacts on that journey. First, it materially accelerated the rate at which we were deploying digital technology. And secondly, it revealed value in those digital technologies that we didn't previously recognize. And so let me illustrate that with a few examples. And I'll start with accelerating deployments shown on the left side of the page. Before the pandemic hit, we had already started testing and using digital connectivity tools to perform remote support. So think of things like factory acceptance testing of equipment from suppliers or turnaround support at our facilities across the globe. In hindsight, though, our pace and the extent to which we deployed those tools was relatively incremental. And that was largely due to perceived risk that remote support might somehow not be as effective as in-person support. And what COVID did was it created the conditions that pushed us to test our limits. And what we learned was that we could do a lot more work remotely than we previously thought. And the time efficiency with doing that remote work or remote support allowed us to actually better leverage our technical resources to improve the coverage of those events that we were supporting remotely. Another example of pushing deployments was in the area of robotic inspections. During the pandemic, there was a premium on minimizing the number of people at our sites, as well as limiting the personal interactions in the field. And this helped drive the deployment of various robotic inspection techniques that we had currently under development. And once again, the realities of the pandemic served to push us past some of our hesitancy and the fears associated with new technologies. And the result was we deployed some of these technologies much faster than we would have without the pandemic. The second thing that we realized was uncovering value that we didn't previously recognize. And our Baton Rouge facility was a great example. It's home to the world's largest isopropyl alcohol unit. and isopropyl alcohol, or IPA, is a key ingredient in hand sanitizers and disinfectant sprays. And what we were able to do was leverage our remote connectivity tools with our advanced dynamic matrix control capability, and rapidly and remotely update control applications. And we did that in sync with physical modifications that we were making to the unit. And what this allowed us to do was very rapidly expand the production capability of that IPA unit. And that helped us meet what was really a step change in demand growth and meet a key societal need. The other example came in the area of remote machinery monitoring. We had just stood up a machinery monitoring group in one of our technical centers in Malaysia. And during Hurricane Laura, our Beaumont, Texas facility was working its way through an orderly shutdown in preparation for the hurricane. But they were doing that with a reduced number of engineers on site to manage COVID risk. And so we were able to utilize our remote monitoring capability to guide the site through the shutdowns. And were able to observe critical machines in detail as they were being brought down. And the remote connectivity and visibility of the data allowed us to do engineering support during an abnormal operation from across the globe. In reality, the team in Malaysia was able to uncover vulnerabilities that ultimately could have compromised an orderly restart and address those vulnerabilities before the units came back up. So these are just a few fairly straightforward examples, but as we reflect back upon 2020, there really is a key lesson here for us. We tend to simultaneously overestimate the risk and underestimate the value of our digital technologies and transformation. And that's a really important lesson for all of us to keep in mind as we pursue some of those more challenging digital technologies and applications. So let's talk about some of those more ambitious programs. One of the areas where we see significant opportunity is in the space of autonomous operations and process control. In our manufacturing facilities, our operators are tasked with running fairly complex processes safely and efficiently around the clock, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And they need to synthesize large quantities of data and manipulate potentially hundreds of variables to optimize an outcome. And that makes this a rich area to leverage digital technology. We're currently pursuing a fleet of opportunities through a venture that we call Intelligent Self-Optimizing Plant, or ISOP for short. And the goal here is to take advantage of cognitive learning and adaptive capabilities based on AI and machine learning to automate, reduce human error, and make better decisions. The slide here shows a few examples from that portfolio. I'll start on the left, where we're currently deploying a digital assistant for our operators that we call Smart Lane. So Smart Lane uses artificial intelligence to guide a console operator through an optimized transient event. And so a great example would be executing a grade switch on a reactor. So that real-time benchmarking and self-correcting guidance allows the operator to reduce off-spec material and avoid costly shutdowns and trips. This technology is already deployed on our polymer plants, and we're currently adapting it for other platforms as well across our fleet of facilities. Another good example in the middle here is a technology that we're actively piloting where we use video images for process control. The program uses mathematical models to interpret video images and translate them into signals that we can then use to monitor and ultimately control an operation. And this becomes particularly useful in areas where traditional instrumentation falls short. So think of things like monitoring the control of a flare, for example. The third example here on this page, and shown on the right, is something that's in the early stages of development. It's a virtual assistant for a console operator that we call Sophia. Sophia means wisdom in Greek. And the way to think of Sophia, it's like an Amazon Alexa, but designed for console operators. And so what it'll do is ingest and contextualize and mine data from various sources and then provide real-time answers to the challenging questions that an operator has in the day-to-day operation of a unit. So this is just a few examples of this opportunity-rich area. And we think that activities like this will have the potential of transforming the way manufacturing facilities operate across a number of industries. And while we're aggressively pursuing these programs, it's become pretty clear to us that the rate and pace of innovation like this is really limited by the current closed and proprietary-based distributed control systems that we operate. And we see a real opportunity for a step change in innovation by creating an open, standards-based, secure, and interoperable DCS architecture. And that observation is what ultimately drove the creation of the industry-led open process automation venture, or what we call the OPA program. The vision for OPA can be condensed down simply into unlocking the ability to take real-time control actions using the latest algorithms and integrating a growing source of plant data to drive value. To do this, it's going to require a platform that has a number of key features. First, the platform has to enable the use of application software from any supplier. Second, it needs to take advantage of low-cost access to all data types. Third, it needs to leverage state-of-the-art computing power at the industrial edge. And finally, it needs to be aligned upon industry standards to support security, interoperability, and also portability between components from different suppliers. Now, that sounds like a really bold idea, but it's really not new. Other industries like avionics and telecommunications have demonstrated the feasibility and the value of moving to open standards-based architectures. ExxonMobil engaged with the Open Process Automation Forum to facilitate the industry in developing the standards, which would be the basis for a next-generation industrial control system. 3 years ago, my predecessor, Kenny Warren, spoke at this conference and laid out the vision for OPA. During that time, and since then, we've come a really long way. And I'd like to share in this page a few highlights from that journey. In 2020, after working on it for about 2 years, we completed the startup of an OPA prototype in our Clinton, New Jersey labs, where we converted one of our pilot units from a proprietary-based system to an OPA-aligned DCS system. The prototype integrated components from 10 different suppliers, and it successfully operated for 4 months through both routine and non-routine operations. The demo successfully demonstrated the concept could be executed. And it also reinforced the need for both hardware and software industry standards. In this past year, in 2020, we also started up our OPA test bed. It was developed by system integrator Yokogawa. The test bed, which contains hardware and software products from a variety of suppliers, is currently confirming readiness for both components and standards to support the system design for an eventual field trial. And then our next major step towards technical readiness is a field trial where we're going to put OPA system into one of our manufacturing facilities. Our plan right now is to move forward with that by year-end 2021. The timing will be driven by the readiness of the components and the standards. While we're really proud and encouraged by this progress, OPA was never intended to be an ExxonMobil program. Its success will be judged by the progress that we make as an industry. And I'm happy to note that the industry has been making quite a bit of progress over the past several years. To begin with, we've seen the membership in the OPA forum. It's grown to well over 100 companies, representing many industries, including oil and gas, petrochemicals, pharma, pulp and paper, just to name a few. You can see on the right, it's just a partial list of the members of the OPA forum. It's also exciting to see the number of testbed systems and demonstration units that have been announced and are progressing at our collaboration partners like BASF, Aramco, and Georgia Pacific. I'd really encourage you to participate in the OPA session this afternoon to hear more detail on that. Equally important, we're seeing a large number of hardware and software suppliers engaged in the forum, along with 5 major DCS suppliers. And so this is all really impressive progress. And I'd like to thank all of the current participants, collaborators, and suppliers who are engaged in the OPA program. The next steps are pretty exciting and also critically important. As I mentioned, ExxonMobil plans to conduct a field trial at one of our operating facilities. But a single field trial by one company is not enough. For OPA to succeed, we have to create a platform and market with critical mass to drive innovation. And we'll need a broad base of DCS users to not only test, but ultimately deploy systems to make that a reality. This seems like a big ask and a daunting task, but I'll connect back to some of my comments at the beginning of this talk. We often have the tendency to overestimate the risk and also underestimate the value of digital technologies. And I think that's going to be quite true for OPA. I think as we progress and once we're successful and we look back on this program, we're going to be really surprised at the value that it generates. And so I'd like to encourage all of the participants to keep up the pace and continue with your efforts, testing systems, and then ultimately in this next phase, deploying systems in your facilities. So just to conclude, I'd like to thank everybody again for all the progress on this program, and also for the opportunity to share these thoughts with you as part of the ARC forum. I'm really looking forward to the panel discussion next. So thanks again.